We are so often told not to be ashamed to ask for help, that we are not alone, that everyone from time to time needs someone to lean on. If someone leaned on you, what would you do? What advice would you give? I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Each week on my podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 12, Chapter 7.
Suck it up and take a pill. On November 30th, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley took his semi-automatic handgun to school, Oxford High School in Oxford, Michigan, an exurb of Detroit less than an hour north of that city's hub. Ethan murdered 4 fellow students, injured 7 others, including a teacher. The semi-automatic handgun was an early Christmas gift from his parents. It was another U.S. mass shooting, a mass shooting defined as any shooting where 4 or more people are killed or injured. The Oxford High School mass shooting may not have stood out for those of us not living in the area. After all, there were 690 mass shootings in America that year, 2021. There were another 650 mass shootings the following year, about 630 in 2023, and this year already pushing 100. Don't worry, there's time. The year is young. Why would the Oxford High School shooting stand out or be historical in any way, considering the colossal loss of life in American gun culture? Ethan Crumbley was arrested and charged as an adult with 24 crimes in total. About a year after the shooting, he pled guilty to all charges, was sentenced to life in prison plus 24 years without the possibility of parole. The shootings, getting arrested, pleading guilty, and spending life in prison were all listed as goals in Ethan's troubling journal, found in his backpack at the scene of the crimes. Troubled teen, access to guns, revenge killing. Though devastating, not exactly unique or memorable due to their frequency. Most of us forget about these things after a few news cycles, unless of course it happens to us. But the Oxford High School shooting is different. It happened November 30th, 2021. Within 3 days, Ethan's parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, were charged with involuntary manslaughter in those same shootings for failing to secure the weapon. You may remember that they failed to show up for their arraignment and were the subject of a one-day manhunt by U.S. Marshals before capture and arrest. It took just over 2 years for the parents to make their way through a bogged-down legal system.
We are continuing to follow breaking news as the verdict has been reached in the Jennifer Crumbley trial. We did see, as you can see, the judge now in the courtroom.
In recent weeks, in separate trials, first Jennifer, then James, were found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in each of the 4 deaths at Oxford High School.
We find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And in count 4 of involuntary manslaughter against Justin Schilling, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
This is why we should not forget the Oxford High School shootings. Convicting the parents of a teenage high school shooter for complicity in the deaths of his victims has never been done. Both were jury trials, including jurors who are parents. It will set a legal precedent for parents that could reach far beyond shootings. First question, I can already hear it through the ether. Parents responsible for the school shooting? Where do we draw the line? Listen, I never accept where do we draw the line as an argument against anything. On its own, it's a fair question, but it's not an argument to not do something. Where do we draw the line? It's called society, the law. The entire judicial and political system is our line-drawing mechanism. The line moves. Can you imagine? Women driving cars. Next thing you know, they'll want to wear pants and have jobs. Where do we draw the line? The question is, how do we erase this line and draw a new one up yonder? You know, you didn't practice soccer enough with your daughter, and as a result she missed the pass, and now our team and my daughter lost the game. Hello, police? You know, I gave your son $10 to shovel my walkway, and I still slipped on the snow. Hello, 911? So that's not what we're talking about. Although those last two scenarios, well, I'm sure you could find yourself a good lawyer who would take it on as a civil case. I'm not being flip about the Crumbley case and a mass shooting. Not at all. Because what was charged in the separate trials of Jennifer and James was a complete dereliction of parental duty. Sure, Ethan was 15, and as your kid gets older, you try and let go a little bit. But when you enter into parenthood, that's for life. My mom passed at age 94, and right up to the end, she would still call me to ask how I was doing, and did I need anything. Jennifer Crumbley had a job. She had an expensive hobby, horses. She found time for an extramarital affair. James seemed largely lethargic and uninterested in anything. About 7 months before the shooting, Ethan texted a friend saying that he was hearing voices in his head and that he asked his dad to take him to a doctor. Dad just gave him some pills and told him to suck it up, and take a pill. Somehow all of the warning signs were ignored. And beyond that, as an early Christmas gift, they bought him a semi-automatic handgun. They took him to a shooting range to learn how to use it. The day before the shooting, Ethan was caught at school searching ammunition on his phone. The school contacted the parents. Jennifer texted Ethan, LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught. The Crumbleys are roughly in their mid-40s. During Jennifer's trial, she tried to pin the blame on James. He bought the gun. It was his idea, although it was she and Ethan that had that mother-son day at the range. Jury said, sorry, Mom, you're guilty. James tried to spin the fault towards Jen. I guess the two weren't as in love as we think they once were. It would have been strange to exonerate James after convicting Jen. No, it's both parents. Guilty.
Count 1, involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin, guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Count 2, as to Tate Meir, guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Count 3, as to Hannah St. Juliana, guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Count 4, to Justin Schilling, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling.
There was some talk of appeals. I personally don't think that'll happen. Involuntary manslaughter in Michigan carries a penalty of up to 5 years in jail. Then again, they are each guilty on 4 separate counts. Sentencing has not yet happened. We'll see. Oh, and by the way, there is the line. It's been drawn. There is where we draw it for now. Your son shoots up a school, kills people with a gun that you purchased for him, taught him how to use it, didn't keep it locked up, didn't lock up the ammo. You simply hid it in a different place in the house. All of this while ignoring his mental health issues and not parenting in general. Well, you're going to jail. It's like you helped him pull the trigger. It is a precedent in a way, but not entirely new. You know, occasionally we hear these horrible stories of children being found living in squalor, their basic needs not met. Those parents, too, have broken the law. They also go to jail. And I'm sure there are the more privileged among us who have spent at least part of our lives blaming our parents for our troubles. It can be a tough go as a mom or a dad. You get blamed for all of the failures and no credit for the successes of an offspring. At some point, with age, comes wisdom. Not always, but hopefully. And you figure out that they did their best. Always loved the Paul McCartney lyric, "Deliver your children." Deliver your children to the good life. Give them peace and shelter and a fork and knife. Shine a light in the morning and a light at night. And if a thing goes wrong, you better make it right. That is not Jennifer and James Crumbley, is it? Not by a long shot. You know, your kid turns 40 and becomes a murderer. Is it the parents' fault? Bad upbringing? Your kid plays with matches and burns down the neighbor's house too? Well, as with those more ridiculous examples that I gave earlier, it's not always the law that needs to get involved, and it is why we have courts and judges and juries, each case on its own merit. Remember, precedent is something that is only cited and taken into consideration. It's not a blanket policy, each on its own merit. The case also stands out because it is a gun crime. That's an American epidemic, which many are trying to fight on many different levels. Maybe trying and convicting the parents of a youth shooter is just another way to combat the problem. You know, a shooting can be worse than the one before, and then everyone says, well, this is it. Now something will finally be done. Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Texas, Buffalo, New York, Oxford, Michigan. Yet nothing happens. Well, because guns don't kill people, people kill people. And anything can be used as a weapon. Do we ban it all? Yeah, I guess I can run over someone with my car, but otherwise the car was built for other functions. I can bludgeon someone to death with a hammer, but the hammer was designed for other functions. A gun has one function: percentage of homicides that are gun crimes. In Australia, 11%, UK, 4%, Canada, 40%, USA, over 80%. Yet, gun problem? What gun problem? You know, I really didn't want to make this all about guns. It's just that you can't ignore that when talking about the issue. The real issue, the real reason for this podcast, is responsibility. Too many guns, not enough responsibility. You actually always hear that in defense of guns, don't you? What about the responsible gun owners? Well, yes, I guess those people do exist. However, if you're like Jennifer and James Crumbley and show no responsibility, then a jury of your peers will assign it to you. Good. I'd like to see more of that. There are two related stories that got me thinking more about responsibility, being held to account. And I know it doesn't help right now that there's a high-profile celebrity presidential candidate that has made a career of deflecting responsibility. It's okay to always blame someone else.
It's a collusion witch hunt.
They're weaponizing the justice system against me. Hey, maybe if you weren't a serial criminal, the justice system would leave you alone. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Anyway, many people who are now campaigning for more responsibility, understanding consequences, maybe they are the reaction to Trump thinking. As I said, two other stories who, along with the Crumbleys, have me contemplating responsibility. I'll try my best to make the connections so you can see where I'm coming from. In British Columbia, Canada, the government has tabled a bill called the Public Health Accountability and Cost Recovery Act. Public Health Accountability and Cost Recovery Act. It's kind of like when governments sued the tobacco companies to help retrieve some of the health costs associated with their products. In British Columbia, this act would give the provincial government the necessary tools to recover costs associated with the production, marketing, and distribution of products that are harmful to adults and children residing in that province. This would mean that not only, tobacco products would be targeted by lawmakers, but vaping products, energy drinks, gaming, social sites, environmental offenders. Gee, where do we draw the line? Well, it would be each case on its own merit, but I hope the act passes. Responsibility. If you will not take it on as a corporation, it shall be mandated upon you. It's a key to freedom, remember? Freedom without responsibility is not really freedom at all. Don't we all want to live free? In the U.S., corporations are recognized as having the same rights under their constitution as a person. Okay, well, people have to be responsible. Imagine being in a relationship where the other person does everything for them and almost nothing for you. What are you getting out of it? Very little. And then they harm you. Shouldn't they be deemed responsible? Society looked beyond 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley and asked, who else is responsible? The BC government is looking beyond a child isolated and alone being targeted on Instagram and asking, who else is responsible? Reconciliation is a huge trend in many countries right now. Reconciliation is really another way of saying taking responsibility. I'm not sure exactly when, but we walked away from all of this for a time. Passing the buck not only became acceptable, but a valued skill. And now, even if it is kicking and screaming, we have to be dragged back into a responsible existence. Here's the other story that, for me, has tied into this stream of consciousness. It involves a high school basketball game in New Jersey. It was just a few weeks ago. Manasquan and Camden High Schools were playing a game. Winner goes to the state championship. Manasquan is down to the Camden powerhouse, but there's a last-second alley-oop by a Manasquan player. It goes in. Final buzzer sounds. Manasquan has just pulled a major upset and is going to the championship game. The crowd goes wild. But wait a second. The referee says time expired before the ball went in.
Referees reversed a call on a buzzer beater.
Basket doesn't count. Camden wins. Well, that's a game for the ages. Except that there is an abundance of cell phone footage from parents and friends that show clearly the clock had time on it as the ball went in.
Video from the venue shows the clock still had some time on it before dude put up that final bucket.
Manasquan should win. The ref made the wrong call. Here's the thing. New Jersey high school basketball doesn't have any rules about video replay. Plus, none of this is even official game video. It's fan cell phone footage. But each different video is consistent in proving Manasquan won the game. What now? Well, we'll get off the basketball court and go to the judicial court. The question became, should courts become involved? I watched an entire show on this. There were discussions about high school sports dreams dashed by human error, kids having to go through life knowing that they won but were denied. Well, some said they would learn the lesson early that life isn't always fair. Ridiculous. And what about Camden, going to the state finals knowing that they didn't really deserve to be there? They took a national survey. Should the courts become involved? Over 80% said no, they should not. This is sports, high school basketball. Leave the courts out of this. Shocking, and the wrong answer. Most cited biggest reason, the tired old argument about technology being used in sports. We're going to lose some of the human factor. I too believe in the human factor of competition. And when I go to a sporting event, you know what humans I am there to see? The players, not the referees, linesmen, umpires, or judges. The players are the ones that deserve our human consideration and be correctly acknowledged for efforts they make during the competition. If we instituted more tech into refereeing sports, it would be fairer for the humans that we all came to see. By the way, Manasquan is going to court, and I'm convinced eventually to the state championship. What does all that have to do with today's theme, responsibility? Well, my question is, if we have the tech and other systems in place to help us right wrongs, why wouldn't we use them? In Michigan and British Columbia, we are. In New Jersey, not so far. Theoretically, it shouldn't have come to all this. Camden should take responsibility and forfeit. Do the right thing. I'd like to think there's a responsible coach in that Camden locker room saying, "Hey boys, is this really the way you want to win it?" In life, I think that's called a teachable moment. Unless, of course, you're not in high school to learn. You're there to win basketball. The game wasn't stolen. You actually lost. Admit it. Suck it up. And take a pill.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.